was dry for half the year last.
It's Tuesday, February 13th, water and sewer meeting. That, we have a quorum of four of us, so we can commence with business. So we have a motion. Motion for the agenda, but I do have some amendments that I'd like to add. We can put these at the very end. Well, let's see. I want to put, review the well sealing program. We'll just make sure we cover that in item E. The next steps. Okay, that's that one.
There is a well sealing program item E there, yeah, that's so there,
Right,
yeah,
so
okay.
we'll just make sure we talk about the next steps and the policy. I'll touch base about the, so we talked about the second meter under C. So just to follow up there, I think we ought to just talk about how many order. I see Kane is on, so we can add that there. I do have, Kane gave me something that we should touch base on about the on-call policy that we'd like to talk about. Just let's just put that at. That'll be the only one we add here. Add that after the well sealing program. So item F will be the on-call policy. I have some copies I'll pass out. So. I make a motion, we approve the agenda with the addition of the on-call policy. Item F.
I'll second it.
Ready? Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Copy of the January 9th meeting notes. Somebody want to make a motion to approve those?
I'll move to approve the January 9th.
John?
Second it.
Mary? Any other comments regarding the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Okay. Joe, you want to go through some
Yeah, absolutely.
your updates, please?
So first, we do have a pay request for Staub, totaling $70,485 approximately. Ryland passed out a front copy of the front page of the pay request. And highlighted the fact that, you know, we are retaining 5% of the contract amount, which is $1 million. But the contractor's getting close to done too. They're 98% done or whatever the number ultimately adds up to. And they're anxious to have us reduce the retainage, and we'll get to that a little bit. In the form of the letter they sent, they essentially asked to reduce retainage, and I said, well, that's fine. We're not gonna do that with this pay request. We're gonna keep it at 5%. Talk about it with the city, make sure everybody's comfortable before we proceed with that. But fairly modest pay request. There's not a ton being done. A lot of what is being done is electrical work, little miscellaneous construction, and then basically clean up and punch list work. So things kind of continue to progress from that perspective.
Are you still waiting for stuff or is everything in?
The biggest thing we're waiting for are some of the lift station control panels. We have, this lift station 1B and the big lift station. And I understand the electrician has at least one of the other panels, but is waiting for a couple more to come in. And then they'll come down and install, so I'm still being told things are coming this month or at latest, early, first part of March.
Also 2 panels now?
Lift station 1A, 2, 3, 4, 3 panels. But I've been told that so 2 panels, I think the electrician has one of the panels. And then,
Question. Is there a lift station on Cedar Woodlands too, or is that just a
yeah, that's lift station,
down at the bottom?
1B.
Okay, so that's.
Yeah.
Okay.
That one came.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a small, it's
Yeah,
a,
small, yeah.
it's a small
Well,
quad grinder station, not like the others, much smaller. So that kind of leads into that substantial completion date letter. And you do have a copy of that letter, and maybe we can just spend a little bit of time looking at that. Start at the bottom of the letter really first. They're asking for a number of things. The first one is that retainage reduction. They're asking for us to drop the retainage to 2%. The contract says that once you hit substantial completion, the owner is obligated to reduce the completion or the retainage for the contract to 2 times or 200% of the work remaining. Right, and so within their pay request, what you don't see here is there's basically a schedule that kind of meters out all of their, tracks out where they are in terms of what's left and what the value is. And that value is a little over 2%. It's about 2.1%. I usually like to err on the side of conservatism. My thought here is, next month, we probably should reduce the retainage. It's fair. That's what the contract requires. I would propose to cut it in half from 5 to 2.5%. I think that's fair. And I think that's in the spirit of the contract as well.
Basically, just over 500,000 then.
So, but again, I want to get your input on that, make sure that we're all on the same page. It does, it's a lot of money. And they had asked for it in January again, and I said no. And they were okay with that because I said we want to talk about it. Anybody have a concern about that?
For me, it sounds like it's per the contract, we're supposed to do that.
Well, only if we grant substantial completion. Or if we agree that we've met that milestone, right?
And that's the other thing that the letter talks about is they want basically us to indicate that they're substantially complete as of the end of January or start of February. And essentially they probably are substantially complete with the few notable exceptions of, we don't have the switchgear isn't coming until next October. Temp facilities are in place. We issued a change order. We addressed that situation and kind of negotiated that, I think, in good faith with the contractor. You remember they kind of cut that change order in half. They ate some of those costs. And so this is part of that discussion. The other thing that remains incomplete is the wastewater treatment facility operator supplies the panels, control panels for the lift stations. Well, we don't have them all yet. Right? Is that their fault? Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. It's obviously taken longer than we want, but we can point to lots of examples as to other projects, the same things are happening, and I can too. It's
commissioning itself too, just the operation, and commissioning too is, they're still,
Well, they're still kind of doing some of that, but they're, we're not started. If you look at the definition of substantial completion in the construction document, it says we're operational. Well, we can't be operational. We had pushed for December and certain things haven't happened. They're in a position and would argue that, well, we could be operational if not for the manufacturing delays and the fact that, we decided not to start up in the middle of winter just because of typical weather conditions, but I think that the substantial completion date thing is great. And why is the substantial completion date thing important? Well, it does two things. It gets the contractor the retainage paid out partially, right, from 5 to 2.5%. Or 2% if you do what they want. And then the other thing it does is it starts that warranty period on select pieces of equipment.
That's the part that I'm scared about.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, the warranty piece I care more about than the $500,000.
Right.
'Cause
Well,
they're-
the warranty extends 2 years, right? And so,
But technically, we're already past that date. And we're not gonna pay them out, you said, till next month anyways. So what, doesn't it go by the payout date?
well, it's payment is through January 31st, so you could say it's February 3rd then, or whatever that Monday was. Or we could say, we're scheduled to start up in mid-March. Well, let's split the difference and call it February 15th or February 28th or March 1st, or maybe we want to wait till March, whatever it is, when we do start up. They push back on that a little bit because they think that has been something that they've been talking to us about at the meetings and that they want because they want to be able to get their subs paid and, some of those subs have had equipment on site since July, because that's when, they were supposed to deliver and a lot of them did, and it's just been sitting there. And, they're bitter about that because they want to get their retainage released. They want to start that warranty period. A lot of those subs would, they're essentially just, their equipment's just sitting there. And so, they're extending that warranty every day that we go. It's kind of a give or take. And I think the answer is not clear cut.
Do you think they'd fight if you move it from January 31st to February 28th? That'd be a big fight.
Crossed my mind that would be fair.
To me, it seems arbitrary. Unless
It
unless
is,
you're
but-
meeting some of those things like the lift stations have been installed and commissioned. It's more about a change in status than it is about calendar date, my opinion. And so that's my concern too. I would be, I don't even know if these kind of things are possible under the contract, but to reduce the retainage, but not, agree that we were at substantial completion yet.
Or say something like,
Can't they install the panels that came in? You said they got 2 panels in. So could they install those? And we're not gonna make them operational.
well, the thing is, they're saying, well, yeah, we'll bring people in, but it's, a 3-day effort to install that panel. So
It's not big.
do we want to, I'm sure what they want to do is have 3 or 4 of them and then,
It's more efficient.
Right.
That makes sense.
I get that, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But-
And I'm fine with that.
Maybe what you want to say is, well, the last panel shows up, that's the substantial completion date.
what's the suggestion? Could we, based on what we think they're going to arrive, rest of them by the end of February, if we were to propose the 2.5% with the March 31st date? It says a substantial completion date, just the idea that will
Well,
have.
March 31st, we should even be operational. Or did you
That
mean,
gives us some more comfort that things are,
right? So I think the first day we start operation, we're substantially complete. So that would be, ideally, it's before March 31st, but none of us know quite yet.
we may not get the panels till. We don't,
Well, right, I mean, you know, once you get the panels, then there's still another week or 2 weeks
Mhm.
when everything's,
So is our go live date still, what did we say in our letter? Was it like March 14th or something? Something like that. So by default, you're telling us is that would have to be the substantial completion date because we're live.
Yeah, that day or before.
Yeah. So that's the maximum we can go.
yeah, we said March 18th.
March 18th, yeah, that's what I thought, okay. March 18th is the furthest we would go. And they have January.
We have a
3rd.
meeting on March 12th. Sir, meeting.
So, you know, I want to be fair, we need to be fair with them. They've been a good partner.
So I'm gonna go back to the idea that was proposed here, because I like that. They want the money released so they can pay the contractors. So can you, so the question, can we drop it from the 5% to 2.5%? So just over $507,000, we would retain, they get back the same amount. But we would have the substantial completion date be March 18th.
Whenever we turn on.
Whenever
the
we
station.
turn on, and then that's when our warranty kicks on, our clock for it starts and all that stuff.
Well,
If it's the money they want, then you're giving them the money.
Right.
but you know, they want both, right?
Yeah, and I know, I've even heard on the backside from some of the equipment suppliers that they had to fight with the factories to get the extended warranties. Usually that starts as soon as the customer receives the piece of equipment, whether they install it or not. So there were a couple of vendors who didn't want to, you know, have an extended warranty period and have it start a year and a half after the equipment was delivered.
Yeah,
So-
imagine you're one of those vendors and you delivered your stuff on April 1st last year. It's ready to go. And now the contractor is saying, well, why don't you just essentially add 11 months to your warranty? I mean, everybody can appreciate why, if you're that vendor, you'd be pissed.
In truth, you're not using it though, so it shouldn't break.
Well, but it's-
between then and now, it's not being used.
But it's sitting there, right? You know, weird things happen to electronics, you know, you just, nobody knows.
But is that possible? I guess.
Yeah. that would be-
I think it is. I like the idea better of tying it to the lift station control panel delivery date. Cause then the other contractor has to actually install them. It's not stop. And that probably speeds the process up a week or two.
When you say the other contractor, it still stops sub, right? Or is it Fitzgerald?
Or it's Fitzgerald.
Oh, okay.
And the reason we did that is just so we had all the same components, you know, throughout. And it's the same, they both have the same electrical contractor, right? It's both
Until
Kilmer.
March, just that, it's with Fitzgerald.
It it's in Fitzgerald's contract. That's what I've been kind of kicking around in my head and I don't know, we have a strong opinion here or not.
We feel comfortable that the Fitzgerald and the electrical contractor will install them
I'm
in
confident.
short order once they're on site.
Matt's assured us that that would happen, but, you know. And that is something they can control, it's not like, and they have been, not like they've been gone. Well, they're gone now, but up till January 31st, they were there in force, doing what they needed to do.
Must be they've been doing something right along every day, cause they keep coming over to get stuff out of their building over
Staub or Fitzgerald?
there. No Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald's been working, they started up again here a couple weeks ago, and they've been doing punchless work, pouring, dog houses and manholes and,
Yeah.
they, oh, it's on the, they directional drilled the water main services underneath Fifth Street, those two with the rock. They got done here last Wednesday and Thursday.
See, they're digging the trench up beside that hill now up to that place.
Oh, for the water service.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably doing those for those property owners outside of the project.
Yeah.
Um. I think there was a water main break they fixed.
And that was down there on East Center Street.
And then they're doing, just miscellaneous adjustments of the tracer wire, snake pits and different things.
And Peoples was over the main lift station yesterday or the day before, finishing up the main electrical power. They're working on the transformer there.
Okay. I thought that was done already, but it wasn't.
Put some decals on and put the rod on it for identifying, red and white rod. They were doing something inside or doing their training. Maybe there's another way. So, so where are we thinking that give them the 2.5, agree to the 2.5, but wait with the date then? Or go for the March date or?
Well, I think we should just say, we'll tell them that your substantial completion date is when the last lift station panel control gets delivered. Cause that seems to be the controlling feature here, right here now, and then it'll give them a little, not that they need incentive, I think, but doesn't hurt, right? And it pushes that date out there probably until the early part of March, and it seems to be a kind of a common thing.
I think,
Did they order the lift station panels? Or who ordered them? Did
Years
Fisker?
ago, yeah.
Okay,
But stop order.
because we talk about,
Yeah, it's in their contract. They're them and Automatic Systems supply those panels. Automatic Systems actually configures them and assembles them, and then Gilmer installs them. But it's under Staub's contract. It's their responsibility. The shop drawings went through them. They get paid for it and they pay the subs to furnish them, and then Fitzgerald gets paid to install them. If that makes sense.
so we're saying when the lift panels arrive or when they're installed by Fitzgerald.
When they're shipped here, when they're on site.
So you don't just stop to say, well, Fitzgerald's,
Right, well, they can't control
they
Fitzgerald,
can't
right?
control it, right?
But when the crate's sitting at the lift or at the treatment facility or wherever they drop them off, that's when substantial completion is.
Are they gonna think that's fair since they're gonna say, I can see their argument coming back going, we don't control when it gets shipped.
well, but they're responsible for providing, so.
At this time, do we need a motion to council to recommend identifying the substantial completion date and the retainage?
Well,
Or you want to just propose that back to Staub?
I can propose that to stop. A motion from you guys would be helpful. Not necessary. Whether it needs to go to council or not, I guess is up to you guys.
It seems like it's a change to the contract terms, maybe slight.
It's an interpretation of the contract, which is technically my job, right? As the engineer, you're basically, I'm not a party to the contract. City's a party to the contract, and the contractor is a party to the contract, and I'm kind of the person that's supposed to facilitate implementation of the contract and interpret the contract if necessary and whatever. So, ultimately, I think, yeah, we should talk to the council about it too, but we've got a week. I can talk to Jason and see if that's reasonable, and he won't like it. It's not what they propose, but
Ken
that's,
said just texted, lift station panels are delivered. In the chat.
Well, that would change things, but Jeff didn't say that.
One comment, everyone, is lift station panels and the generator. I think those are all kind of critical path components. The lift station panels and the lift station 1 generator.
Well, Staub doesn't have anything to do with the generator, though.
Okay,
That's under Fitzgerald's contract. I know it's confusing.
good point. I just think it is critical path.
Yeah. And that's supposed to be here next week, is what Matt's telling me.
Yep, I heard that a couple of weeks ago too, but yeah. Thanks.
Until the truck shows up, I don't think you ever know.
So Kane, are you saying all the lift station panels are in?
I think if we're gonna offer a substantial completion date, it would require all of the critical path components. That's just my thought.
Well, and I think, in my mind, the only critical path components left is the lift station panel.
We can't do anything about it, so.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think everything else is, things like the switch gear and stuff isn't gonna be here, but we have a workaround.
So I guess I would feel comfortable making a motion to recommend council that we approve a reduction in retainage from 5% to 2.5%. And we grant substantial completion status to the treatment plant contract once all the lift station panels have been delivered on site.
I'll second it.
Both are talking about the identify the substantial.
Grant substantial completion once all the lift station control panels have been received. And assuming that Staub is friendly to that.
So, I guess Joe, if you want to touch base with Jason. And if we hear anything between now and the 20th about this motion that you'll talk to him about.
We still gotta vote on the motion. We have a motion in a second. We didn't vote on it.
Yeah, I just get a clarification on the motion.
Yep.
Just explain what you're gonna touch base with Jason based on this.
I will,
Okay.
yeah, yep, and see if
Yeah,
it
just a clarification.
are acceptable terms to them or.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Well, it looks like for this
Opposed?
letter, Jason wanted you to notify by by February 16th anyway, so.
I called him the next day and I told him I wasn't gonna make these decisions unilaterally.
Okay.
And they're good to work with. They're not jerks.
Out of curiosity, do we have the insurance in place? Cause that was one of the questions they asked. Do we have insurance
Well,
from the city's perspective? Because they're gonna cancel their builder's risk insurance. So if something happens to the plant, the city our insurance policy will cover it. A lot of expensive equipment.
that's not what the contract says. So the contract says they will carry insurance until completion of the project. Doesn't say substantial completion of the project. It says completion of the project.
So then you will also tell them then that,
I will.
because that's a key piece to me, is that, again, a lot of expensive equipment that I wouldn't want the city to be at risk for. With something to vandalize or whatever.
And the seating, as I understand it too, is kind of a, at least the way I heard from the service, it's kind of a guess how much seat is necessary. And he was gonna arrange from other treatment plants to get that seating, so It all depends if.
Yeah, which I actually, the city of Rochester just had to lend a hand to the folks in St. Charles. To do the same kind of thing. They had some kind of chemical upset. And so I sent an email to Joe, giving him contacts at the city of Rochester to,
Mhm.
work that out.
So we will contact. That was helpful. I haven't reached out yet. We have a meeting about seating next Friday. And so I thought in probably late this week or early next week, I'd make that contact and just not to get too ahead of it, but that seems like a fabulous option if they're willing and able to do that. But,
Okay. Um,
So I will have that discussion with Jason too about the builder's risk unless he can point out where I'm misreading the contract. That is our stance. Kane, do you happen to know if the city is insuring anything out there yet?
I do not know, Joe. I know, City Hall had some insurance renewal forms for vehicles, fire trucks, and buildings that they were going through. And I requested that the sewer plant, all the buildings, the lift stations, the I don't know, the air reliefs, manholes, the grinder stations. I guess I don't know how much of that needs insurance. I guess I'd lean to somebody else how we insure a sewer system.
I don't know personally either. Shoot, sure. Yeah,
I think the
fire hydrants,
treatment
things
plant
like
was
that.
on the listing.
Treatment facility is different, right? That definitely is something. Lift stations. I suppose they could be vandalized. I suppose they could get hit by lightning. I suppose they should be insured.
Seemed like I remembered some discussion
No.
that they were having with North Risk, is our partner, insurance partner, about coming out and doing a tour.
Well, yeah, you really should talk to the insurance people and see
What they cover.
what's the industry standard. I mean,
The League of Minnesota Cities, I think, would be a good resource too.
Yeah, they take care of our work comp and things like that.
Or even talking to like
Today,
Pine
I'll-
Island or somebody else who has,
Yeah,
like, what are you guys insuring? What is your coverage?
you know,
Who do you have, number one, and then what do they cover?
Right now, North Risk covers all of our buildings and everything else, so.
yeah, and I think there's some component of the insurance that, you know, if there is a sewer backup that is caused by some negligence or fault of the city that, you know, homeowners can file a claim against the city. That kind of thing too, but
so, that first item, the operation of the plan, it refers to, and since I got Kane, I was just gonna ask. Requiring Orinoco to monitor miscellaneous tasks until plant is seeded. Are you monitoring something out there, Kane?
Right now, no. Staub still is 100% in charge of the facility, the construction. We have not taken on any additional task or work out there.
They define things that they want you to take out or take over though?
They have not. I don't know what exactly they're talking about there.
You don't know, it just doesn't, it's very vague, you know, but it says we will not, we do not intend to turn over all operation security of the plant to the city. They do not intend that, but will require Orinoco monitor miscellaneous tasks. I just don't know what that means. I thought maybe you had some agreement to take a look at something out there.
I have not, Joe.
Excuse me.
I'll sort that out too.
Touch base with Jason on that.
Yeah, well, that's all I have there. Anything else from you guys? Next item is change order 4. I did, draft change order 4 based on, some change order requests the contractor has submitted. Op- Item A deals with the electrical service to, that heat trace, for the chemicals coming out of the tertiary building and going to the SBR structure. That to add the electrical service for that heat trace is $13,358. We've been talking about that for quite some time. We did negotiate that, to be significantly less. The contractor was asking that the heat trace itself be included in that too, and that's clearly in the plans, and there was a little back and forth on that, but that's where we ended up. And so, by the way, there's the front page here is really the first 2 pages kind of talk about, they're the change order documents, and then the supporting evidence, the supporting appendices, change order requests are from Staub, back up each one of these items if you want to see them. So that one we've talked about for some time, and I've kind of been dragging my feet in anticipation that something else would happen, and well, indeed, something else did happen. A couple things were identified. Item B is dealing with an electrical service to power an actuated, or to power actuated knife valves, located in the SBR. They are currently temporarily wired, but the right way to do that would be to add MCC feeder bucket and power these knife gates, which have kind of a unique power requirement through that MCC bucket. That was not included in the shop drawings and the construction plan for the MCC, so we'd have to add that, and that cost adds an extra $6,074. And the last one deals with the pre-treatment building garage door opener. The garage door opener that was specified in there, and that the contractor installed, was not appropriate for that space, and that it's not explosion proof. And so we observed that during the construction process and have worked with the contractor to identify what would meet the space requirements. And that to switch that operator and some of the associated components out to be compliant with the NEMA 7 explosion proof requirement.
Does that building in general have a high risk for explosion
Yes.
due to the chemicals and stuff?
Per NFPA standards, yes, but in reality, no.
Okay, I was just curious, like.
One of the things that I'm learning, I guess, or I've been told is it just might not really necessarily be a significant explosion risk, but it's a pretty toxic environment, and things that are exposed to some of those gases and exposed to that environment are prone to failure quicker. And so having, things closed or explosion proof prevents premature failure of some of these elements. Have you had similar experience or perspective?
Yes and no. I mean, explosion proof will provide some level of protection. I mean, the equipment, you can't get like cheap explosion-proof equipment, right? It's all made by reputable manufacturers to high-quality standards. So that kind of already gets you into better grade of equipment. But really what it means is everything comes in a cast aluminum box. So that when your contactor closes, if there's a spark and there's a buildup of explosive gases from the space, the explosion is all contained within that big aluminum enclosure, and it doesn't potentially cause the rest of the building to explode as well. Most of the risk comes from if someone were to dump 50 gallons of gasoline down the sewer, you know, that floats right on the surface. And so when it gets to your headworks, it's floating right there on the surface and just kind of hanging out. Sometimes you can get the same thing with methane vapors accumulating. So the buildings are generally ventilated at a pretty high rate to control that. Plus there's monitoring systems to alarm if you get even 10% gas concentration. So it's pretty unlikely. But it's the code.
It's the code.
Yeah.
And everything else in the building is an explosion. It's just, so this was not.
Picked up on that.
So is this something that was missed in the contract spec then, or?
Yes, we spec'd a normal opener rather than an explosion proof one.
This is the outside door where the dumpster sits
The
in.
big overhead door, yeah. Well, it's just a garage.
Okay.
I think the explosion proof operator cost is a lot, but we did a decent amount of checking and it's just, just like you said, that stuff is,
Yeah, I mean, just the aluminum box probably weighs 40 pounds.
it's just expensive.
I might have a spare.
In your garage to behind off the second. That explosion.
Pick one of those up.
Well, no, we have one.
Do you have a spare one of that?
Because in my-
What are you making in that garage?
sometimes specs get, you know, mixed up, and we ended up in Rochester, the city of Rochester ended up installing an explosion-proof garage door opener because the architect thought it was an explosion-proof space, but it really wasn't. And so then we followed through on it because it was, you know, it's easier than trying to do a change order. And so they installed it, and then we said, okay, great, thank you. Now, time and materials, we want you to change it out. Because it was just gonna be a nightmare, so I know we've got the control box, I don't know if we actually swapped out the opener. So I'll see, maybe the city of Rochester will sell it to them for cheap.
Probably just the exact opposite.
Exact opposite, but we didn't get a deduct.
So,
So the,
I make a motion. Are you done?
I was just gonna say the total of those totals $26,000. And that the summary is on kind of in the back.
We haven't spent much at all, 10%.
Right, yeah, we're just a little over
10%.
200,000.
I make a motion, we approve the, recommended council to approve the total change order number 4 for 26,355.
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Construction status update, I think we kind of talked about it. Stop did pull out, they have been back this last week, just doing miscellaneous punch list work. Somebody backed into a fire hydrant out there, so that got fixed today. Miscellaneous stuff. But they do have a small force on site and I think that's gonna continue here for a little bit. Monthly coordination meeting, we were supposed to have one today. We decided to push it off. We do have that seating meeting the Friday after next, and then we'll have a normal coordination meeting, I think March 13th or
Well,
12th. I think the invite went out today.
yeah, April sent the invite today, so, yeah. The 12th, yes.
Um,
All right.
no real updates on the other items. Kind of all status quo on the switch gear. I'm struggling to remember the 480 electric panel. Kane, do you happen to know?
I believe that panel was required at the treatment facility, but I can't recall which device it was for. I thought it was sludge handling blowers, but I could be wrong.
Has it been shipped yet? Is it on site?
I do not know that status, Joe.
I can ask and
We'll follow up at the March meeting.
we talked about the lift station control panels. Startup. We're still looking at March 18th. Obviously, we have a few things to coordinate there and a few things to get done, that the contractor does, but it's coming quick. Fitzgerald,
One question on the commissioning training and the way this weather's working out, is there a more fixed date when it will start in March or?
I think it's still largely dependent on the control panels for the lift stations and the weather, the week, you know. I think the short-term weather forecast, you know, if it's gonna snow a foot or if it's beautiful out, I think will have a little bit of impact.
Well, we have the early date of March 18th if everything goes well, right?
Yeah, well, that's the target, so trees will probably be blooming by then.
And that's with the radios too, FM radios and things like that, the lift station. That's part of the
Yeah,
panels.
I think they have the radios and all that stuff. They're gonna
Okay, just installing.
just install them at the same time we do the panels. The two water services on Fifth Street did get installed last week. And I understand that went well. Kane, any comments on those two water services?
The one on the west side, the west home, that one Ellingson drilled all the way from the existing well up on top of the hill, all the way down to the water main on the south side of Fifth Street. That worked out really good. And then the other
So
home
they had
up
an
on the
arrangement
hill.
with the contractor or the
Correct.
property owner to do that, yeah.
Yep, the property owners had an agreement with Ellingson. The other property owners on the east side, they opted to hire Fitzgerald to open trench the water service. That one is proving to have some difficulty, just the steep hill and the power lines, and it's proved to be more difficult than Fitzgerald imagined.
Are they getting it?
It's taken them 2 days. I think they're close. I think tomorrow they should have it.
So the drilling, the actual drilling work, do you remember how long that took? I heard like a day and a half.
I think it was closer to 2 full days. That was the $980 an hour, correct, Joe?
Yeah, something like that.
Yep. Okay. I think it was closer to 2 days.
But that included the service work for the property owner.
Correct. So the property owner is on the line for a portion of that drill, I take it.
I'm sure,
Where the city's only responsible from the water main to the curb stop on the north side of Fifth, if that makes sense.
right? Okay.
The, next item was,
Yeah, property owner.
property owners and
So we're to probably about 30 property owners that have been connected. There were a number of people that had connected and we didn't have that documented right, and they contacted us, and a few other people have completed that work, so I'm guessing we're at about 30 people left. And we did, of course, send that letter out in January, as we talked about before. So we're expecting Ellingson to start up and start tying those grinder stations in as soon as the treatment facility is operational. No pay request for Fitzgerald this month. Really, they didn't do anything that warranted payment in January. They probably will have a pay request in March for their little bit of February work. Item C, discussion of how to handle sewer rates before treatment facility is operational this spring.
so we, we'll be discussing the fees at their February 20th meeting for the sewer, the water, along with some other fees that staff would like to see increased on our fee sheet, not just sewer and water.
Did you want to include the PIF increases and the SAC increases in that? We've been, I think that was maybe some of the confusion. So the sewer and water rates,
Yeah, it was my. Yeah,
we talked about 3%, but the SAC and the PIF were 5%. At least that's what we've been putting in the development agreements. And then I think the water availability charge, we just decided that it should go up 3% every year,
3%.
the WAC.
The WAC, SAC and PIF are 5.
No, the PIF and the SAC are 5. The
Yes.
WAC is 3.
What's the reason for those being different?
I think the main is just because the WAC is water availability, it follows our water rates. And SAC and PIF is more tied to our treatment plant and just the expense that we're dealing with is staying ahead of our PFA loans.
Sure.
I'll follow up with Renee tomorrow now.
On that D there, it talks about May 3rd, 2024. The deadline, does that include everybody, or just that business for them grinder stations?
Mostly the people that got the grinder stations, and most of those are the people in the H area. With a few exceptions. Remember last spring, we sent out 60 letters. So yeah, those folks, other folks haven't got their letters yet. We'll thought we'd send them out this spring when conditions were fit to start again.
Like me, there, as soon as the weather's fit and get somebody to do it, then if the plant's going, we can go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll get a letter this spring, right after the wastewater treatment facility starts operation, and then you get a year from that point.
I can jump back to our discussion about this, the water meter rates. That's where we're going to add comment about the second meter. We talked about doing it. And I think that's still the plan. The question that Kane had was, and maybe it's just So we'll have to take a swag at it, how many of those second meters should we order? Kane, I think you said you had about 100 meters left now.
Correct. I've got 100 on site, and we need to estimate how many people would like a second meter for irrigation or whatever reasons, non-sewered water. So it'd be a deduct meter. So we need to figure out how many people irrigate, take a stab at it.
So I have a sheet I can pass it out, but he got a quote. I don't know if we talked about this in January, but it's $337 is our cost for that meter. And we could offer it for that cost as opposed to our typical 450 for the main meter, so.
So Kane, are we able to look through the water account information and look at who uses more water in July and August than they do in February by like, I would guess it's double, 50% for sure.
Yeah, we sure can.
But not everybody.
We can take a guess at that. Yeah.
Do that math and count those numbers up, and then I'd take that times 2/3, 1/2. It might take people a few years to decide that it's worth it for them. Right?
Yeah, we have another dry summer,
Yeah.
but there's people out there watering like it's nothing too, so.
Well, and I think I got a plumber come look at mine and I had some other work I was gonna, but, I'm probably looking at about $1,000 to redo my meter, add the second meter and swap out a couple valves.
$1,000, that's including the 337.
Yeah, so about $600 in labor and plus the meter.
Doesn't take much to get to $1,000 anymore, does it?
No, it's plastic
4 hours of
piping,
work.
so yeah.
Probably.
So I guess if we really wanna put a, boundary on what that number is, I think we try to dump that data into a spreadsheet and crunch some numbers and then, yeah, either, somewhere less than 100% of that number.
No,
Maybe even less than 50%. I don't know. I just think it takes time for people to do stuff or to realize they need to do stuff and then make it a priority.
well, people are gonna wanna make sure there's an ROI on it, right? Cause if you're gonna spend $1,000, I mean, Kane, if I recall at the last meeting, you had said Pine Island or whoever the other ones that you looked at, the city offers the meter at half of the price of whatever they sell the normal meter at.
Yep.
But in this
Yep.
case,
Eota was one of them. Dover.
cause I think that's what people are gonna look at, right? Is if it's $600 for labor for a plumber, and then 337 or whatever it's gonna end up being for the meter, that's what they're gonna look at and say $1,000. Well, if I don't do it, and I just pay the
The sewer fee instead.
sewer fee, how many years can I run before I get $1,000, right? That's what they're gonna look at.
Weren't we talking about 50% of the meter cost though?
We were talking about that based on surrounding communities. And when we found out the cost was $337, that's where the committee decided, but we think it's,
Well, half the cost of the other one would be what, 225? So. $112 more.
$10.
So that 450 fee that we're charging people, that's the same meter?
I'm sorry.
The 450 fee that for your first meter?
Per meter.
But that's the same meter as the second meter. That's really 337. Okay. So the city makes a little on it. Gotcha. So we wouldn't do half of the two, to your point then, do 225. The city makes money on when you sell your first meter, but you lose money, but you're not,
$12. So do we get $112 and more revenue for the water use in the second meter. Over the course of a period of time to offset that cost.
You don't get any more revenue, you're actually losing revenue when they put the meter in, but. Well, but you're not also incurring the treatment costs, right? So,
Of water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
yeah,
And I guess it's, none of it goes to the water side, it's all on the sewer side that the delta is.
So Kane, maybe we could take a couple, half a dozen of the big water users and put in a water meter for $225 and see how much water offsets that $112 cost difference between this 337 and half of the water meter cost.
Gotcha. Yep. I can pull some data and kind of come up with a number of how many people do irrigate. And like you say, it's not going to be all 100% of them, but I will get on that.
and
Come back
if you
at the
need to
March
look
meeting.
up somebody's information, Kane, just as a reference, you can, more than happy to look at mine.
Absolutely. I know I've looked at Larry Stolps and I've looked at Rylands, and we can definitely come up with an estimate of how much water was above and beyond an average month, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I determine is the irrigation water.
Kane, the other comment you made was that was gonna be a deduct meter. I recall from our last month's conversation that one meter, that the meters were gonna be in parallel. One would serve domestic use and would get billed water and sewer. One would serve irrigation only and would only get billed water. Is that your recollection as well?
So there's two ways to do it. You can do them in series, one right after another, or you can do them in parallel. How they're plumbed, however your basement or your mechanical room's configured, that may be unique to each house.
Okay.
And the hopefully Renee at City Hall can come up with a way to do a deduct or to do the separate fees, I guess, if that makes sense.
What would be
But
easier for the city? Because could you mandate one way or the other? 'Cause I would expect that you'd be able to plumb it either way. It's just probably one way.
Yeah, some folks might not, if they've got a really constrained service entrance, that'd be trickier.
Well, it just sounds like now it's gonna be hard for the city to decide how is your plumb? How would the city
Right,
know
yeah.
after the fact?
Seems like
And
better just from the standpoint, most of the irrigation does at night, which is during the day. Now, one meter goes to irrigation, the other meter goes to the house. This house meter is probably not doing much for the majority of the house during the evening or early morning.
Yeah.
No, there's two ways to. Well, let's see what kind of numbers Kane comes up with and bring that back to the March meeting.
Okay, yeah, like I said, I believe it can be entered into the billing system as a meter in series or a meter in parallel. So,
I would say as long as we can handle it from a account management perspective either way, then we allow either way.
correct, yep, and you know, city staff is on site and they are doing that inspection. They will be able to say it's in series or it's in parallel.
All right, next item is our water hookup deadline coming up. Talked about the 75 monthly utility penalty fee.
That $75 was something too that we were hoping to get on the fee schedule.
Right,
Assuming you wanted, was $75, that hasn't changed for quite some time. Is that the right number? I guess think that's something the city might want to include in the fee schedule, so it's somewhere and then decide if,
Well, we
$75 is
have
the right number.
We have a current late water fee in there now. For the
This will
current,
put that-
users.
Yeah, that'll apply for both sewer and water non-connection.
But the sewer won't be for another year. So right now, we're just talking about the water fee,
Well,
because we haven't sent the letter out for the
people
sewer.
don't put in their electrical services to power their grinder stations this spring, they will get charged that fee. Theoretically, that's what we've told them. People that are getting a grinder station, that grinder station will be live this spring as soon as Ellingson gets to them. But if they don't install their electrical service from their box to the disconnect outside, we can't connect them. And so we told them that they'll be subject to that monthly fee plus a remobilization charge from the contractor if indeed that has to happen.
75 is a year from now is for the gravity ones.
But it's the same, it's the same concept, right?
Yes.
And it applies to both the sewer and water connections.
And so in theory, a homeowner could get up to $150 a month fee plus whatever remobilization charges if they're. Is there a reason that fee is so that high? I mean, I understand what the utility
It's
is.
essentially a disincentive, so it's an incentive, it incents the property owner to connect, because we don't want to have people think, well, I'm on my well now and that doesn't cost me anything, so it's cheaper for me to just never connect.
All right, and the utility has an interest in recouping its costs and having users, but that $75 seems almost punitive. Not disincentivizes one word, I might use punitive.
Right. So it's supposed to, again, it's supposed to incent you to say, this $75 charge is less than my sewer or water bill would be, so I might as well get this done and avoid paying it, and that $75 fee has been, I think, in play for years here on the water side, because there's a handful of people that just refuse to connect to water. Pay a $75 fee every month.
So the 75 for the grinder systems, that's still dependent on Ellingson hooking them up. Those 83 to come back to finish.
Yeah.
So there's a time period in there that 4, 6 weeks, 2 months before.
Yeah.
So do we wait?
Well, it'd be nice if the fee schedule was in there so that, when everything is operational and they could have been connected, we can start charging them, but unless you put
The
the
idea is
fee.
just getting out there on the fee schedule, but
Yes.
the start date is out there someplace. Some type of information back to City Hall from Ellingson or from you or whoever is going to supply that completion date on that address. All right, anything else on water or hookups for, grinders? Okay, next item is our well seeding program in March or February. This is on the information we got from Skip originally. February and March. Skip is taking the initiative to reach out to people that are getting water connections to make sure they contact him or.
So Ron, this is just internal to the grant application. This doesn't have anything to do with the property owners.
No, but Skip has to go out and contact those water users to make them aware of it, right? Or does the homeowner have to go back to Skip? To apply for the grant,
The homeowner has to apply for the grant, yes.
so how? I guess we did send him a letter.
Yeah, it's been in the connection guidance document that this program exists.
Yeah, that's right.
And Skip's name and phone number is in there, and the only thing that's changed is the amount of funding available has increased, and therefore instead of them paying 50%, they'll pay up to 75 or 80%, and there's no maximum payment. So that has improved. Everything else remains the same. So I think the stuff that was highlighted here, there are steps that Skip and SWCD needs to take to complete the award of the grant, but this isn't for the public.
I guess, do we know, has anybody emailed or contacted Skip?
You know, we met with them last month.
That's good.
Yep.
And I
And
mean, this is a great opportunity for our residents, and
yeah,
so if the word's getting out and people are contacting them, that's awesome.
So you said, has anybody emailed Skip? You said yes, but have residents taken advantage of this program, I think is a more.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I.
Are you,
so a number of people have contacted Skip. And he's been kind of waiting for the grant money to come in. They had a little bit of grant money to start with. But the grant money's got to be available before they can essentially dish it out. But they haven't had a lot of people contact them. But in the connection guidance document, there is a paragraph on this program. You know, and Skip's name and phone number and email address are all in there. So it's a great.
Do we have this like on our website also or anything?
I'm sorry.
Do we have this on the city, like on the water sewer website or anything? I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
get the message out, because this is a great opportunity for residents, right?
Mhm.
And so the more ways we can put it out there so that somebody sees it and then applies for it, because I'd hate to have nobody apply for it.
I think one of the things that the SWCD Skips group we're planning to do is have some open house events here. Just they come in and we'll help you fill out your application and tell you what, you know, answer any questions. So they were looking at doing that this spring.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes. So I think the city needs to facilitate that, and putting things up on the website would be
Yeah, we can,
great. You know, this little blurb right in the thing kind of tells you what is going on, and it's a great deal. People need to take advantage of it.
so I think we'll look at that connection guide discount to see what was in your paragraph. And pull the key points and dates and contact out and put that on the,
Yeah, I wouldn't tell, these dates again, they're for Skip, not,
well, whatever in your paragraph, the contact. Repeat what's probably over in the.
I'm just gonna see if it's.
Probably over on the left.
Oh, they are over here?
Yeah.
No, the connection documents are over.
Might be good to. It might be good to have a public information meeting maybe in April to talk about this and just talk about just general water sewer connection questions, grinder questions. Continue to keep that awareness out there and have people come in and I think it's we've been well attended if we can do that.
Yeah, I'm sure people have some questions. It's never a bad idea. Takes a little time.
April might be better when we have a bit more firm, maybe the later part of April, when we have more of a definitive time about the plant operation too.
Yeah, I agree.
Next item was our on-call. And Kane has put together a memo.
Yeah, I just feel that, the sewer, the grinder stations, the collections, the conveyance, I think there's a lot more to this. And since People's Services is only taking on a portion of the responsibility, they are offering 24/7 coverage. The plant and the lift stations have the ability to call out alarms. And I believe the grinder stations have that capability as well. They have some diagnostics and can alert homeowners and or the city staff responsible for their operation. I would just like to be better prepared once we go live to have people available. A pretty simple way to do that would be just a flat rate, a flat hourly rate for the hours outside of the work week. And this is a starting point. I just need the conversation to start, and I'm looking for some input. And yeah.
So the one question I have on point number 2, and that's where you talk about the $4 an hour on call and the 128 hours. So that's the potential time that you could be called out for work.
Correct. You take 7 days in the week, 24 hours a day, minus the 40 core hours that the employee is working. That's how you get the 128. And if you just go a flat fee of, say, $4 an hour, that employee will get 128 hours times $4 an hour, and that will be added to the employee's pay period. The idea is that we would rotate all 4 public works employees, myself included, and it would be once a month, 12 times a year. You'd be responsible. You'd have to respond. You'd have to be within 30 minutes of Orinoco. You'd have to be available if there were an issue. Grinder station, good old fashioned backup, and the water system too. Our water system is growing, and I feel like there's some risk out there that we just need to be prepared for.
So are you saying that we will be paying the 128 hours times $4 an hour is $512 per week? And if there's no
Correct.
calls needed, you're still getting $512 per week?
Correct. You're available for those emergencies. And if you were to get called in, whether that be to the water system, the sewer system, the treatment facility, whatever it may be, and this could be expanded to other city departments, snow removal, parks, I guess that's kind of a questionable one. But if we were to be called in, you would get your time and a half rate and a minimum of 2 hours per incident.
I agree with your policy of having on call. I'm just having some difficulty paying that much for no calls, as opposed to being paid for actual calls.
Well, so Rylan, along that point, so in most places, like even in my field, we do pay people a flat rate, even if you don't get called into work. The reason being is you have to stay within 30, in this case, 30 minutes of Orinoco, right? So you can't go with your family to far away or other, so you're making yourself available during that time, and that's what you're essentially compensating for them for with a flat rate. So that actually is pretty standard. You actually get paid a flat rate
Okay,
for,
all right.
when we put people on call. Now, it's negotiable, you can change that rate to whatever you want, but you're paying someone to stay in the area.
And this is one person per weekend?
Correct. It would be one person, say Monday morning to Monday morning, and then we would pass the call forwarding on to the next staff member, and they would be on call. Pretty typical of some surrounding communities. The other idea is that that person who is on call is going to work a different shift than the rest of the staff. They would work 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. So that would allow more coverage for the core hours, Monday through Friday. And then another part of this is that they would be getting compensated for doing the well checks on the weekend, as well as some sewer treatment facility checks on the weekend. We don't know right now how much time is going to be involved at the treatment facility on the weekends. From what Peoples has shared with us, it's minimal. Get in, do your tests, do your checks, get out. So some people may be very efficient while others may not. And that's just we'll have to see how everyone learns and adapts.
So Kane, under your proposal here, that time spent doing checks of the water and sewer system, is that included in the 128 hours of on-call pay, or is that covered under the time and a half rate?
It's covered under the $512, the $4 available hourly charge. So if it takes me 2 hours at the plant and an hour at the well, Saturday and Sunday, I'm not getting paid for 6 hours. I'm just getting that flat rate for covering that weekend well check and weekend sewer check. And of course, being available nights and weekends. And then if it does fall on a holiday, you're just required to continue to do those well checks and sewer checks. And then it would just be that many less hours included on the 128 hours. So if July 4th falls on a Monday, if it's my week, I'm going to get 8 additional $4 an hour to work that, to do my well checks and to do my sewer checks on July 4th.
And just curious, Kane, so my first question is, I'm not a labor law expert, but labor law requires time and a half pay for anything over 40 hours in a work week. And so if we're covering normal responsibilities of doing the rounds, and we're only paying $4 an hour, I'd be a little bit concerned. I'd want somebody who knows more about labor law to review that and make sure that we're compliant. So that we don't put ourselves.
We have attorneys that can confirm that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Dylan. I would like this to go in front of the attorney once we kind of land on some of the details. And, currently right now, city staff get paid comp time for anything over 80 hours in a pay period. So it's not the 40 hours.
Yeah,
What I
that's
like-
an option, right, 80
Yeah.
per pay period?
per pay period.
That, you might wanna have the attorney review that as well.
And the attorney and the personnel committee have been reviewing the personnel policy. And my hope is that that policy gets revised and drafted by the attorneys and the council adopts it in the months to come. With that being said, though, sewer operations are going to be happening here this spring, and I would just like to be ahead of it and prepared. So, like I said, tonight, this is just a conversation piece. I'd just like to get some ideas, some feedback. I don't want to make this so complicated. I'd like to just stick to the flat rate. Seems logical to me, but Paul, you know how the healthcare system works and how doctors and nurses and
So obviously the city is not large enough like Rochester to have 24/7 coverage. So we're not gonna be
Correct.
staffed that way. So I think having an on-call person is a good thing, absolutely. You're
Not
gonna have stuff. Also having them, to Dylan's point, make sure it's fairly compensated and compliant with all labor laws and stuff, so the attorney could review that. So I agree, I think an on-call, rate, to me, that's a standard thing, especially for something of this nature in operations. I think we should have a plan, should have a compensation.
One of the things too, is from a budget standpoint. This is like a $26,624 increase in our budgets, which we didn't budget for,
Plus it'll have impacts on.
plus
benefits.
hours paid for work. For 1.5 times. You could get called out, the $4 is to put it around, then you get paid for your 2 hours. A minimum of 2 hours.
So our fees that we're collecting you don't think would cover that?
Well, it hasn't been included in any of the financial calculations so far. Right?
so to add to that point, overtime wages have never been added to the city budget. Essentially you take everyone's hourly wage and you times it by 2,080 hours, and that is the budget for that employee. So there is no real additional cushion for any employee. And so what the city has done is offered any hours worked over 80 will be compensated at time and a half
Yeah.
in comp hours. So you work 2 additional hours, you work 82 hours, you get 2 hours times 1.5. Those hours go into your comp, your bank, your bucket. So that's where the city's, how they've been operating for years. We've never had that payout of overtime rate, time and a half rate.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of each way has its advantages. One way it doesn't cost anything, but you can end up short of labor, if everybody's earning a bunch of comp time. And then when you gotta get the work done, you're shorthanded because you haven't paid for it. On the other hand, paying for it, you guarantee you've got people on hand, but you have to pay for it.
It's a $40 million plan. So $26,000 a year seems small token to make sure that things are handled.
That'll have impacts on the para contributions and everything else, right? I mean, I assume.
Right, we're tracking the PTO time. We get PTO time out for
Yeah.
payouts at the end of the year, and Renee's tracking that a lot better than we have in the past, so.
So I'm not opposed to it, but it would have to be something that, even if it doesn't make it into this year's rate structure, that it gets accounted for eventually.
Is this so Kane, you said the city attorney is currently working on something right now?
The personnel committee and city staff have gone through the League of Minnesota Cities personnel policy template. We've gone through that, we've worked through it, we've added the unique things that Orinoco offers, and those details have been added, and now it's gonna go off to our attorney. They're gonna give it the final, and then it's gonna come back to city staff for review and understanding, and then it's gonna get approved by the council. Currently, we're working off of our old policy. The new one hasn't been adopted. So with that, now's the time to kind of make these changes and add these policies and on-call, overtime, compensation time. So back to Ryland's point, we didn't budget any money for on-call. This 26,000 is not budgeted. So the other option would be to do the comp rate. What's $512 in comp time? Agree to 10 hours of comp time, go on to the employee's time card every time they're on call. Something equivalent. Instead of paying out, you would pay out in hours, comp hours. Just a thought.
Well, that'd be close to 12 to 20 hours, something like that.
And then we run into the risk of all of our employees have this additional comp time, and they want to take off the weekend, they want to take days off, and the limited staff we have is going to be forced to work alone, and with that is, I'm developing a policy that we need at least 2 people on site. Somebody falls, gets hurt, there's another person on site, maybe not at the treatment facility or maybe somewhere else in town, but they're at least available to go provide assistance, provide rescue. I'm just kind of throwing some ideas around here because there's going to be a lot of confined space. There's going to be just a lot of ground to cover with current staff.
Do all of our current staff meet the 30-minute response time based on their current residence?
Correct, they do.
First 3 do. The new person we haven't hired yet, so.
Okay. In Rochester, sometimes that's a limiting factor because Rochester can tend to pull from surrounding communities. Not everybody lives within 30 minutes. I don't know how much of an issue we would anticipate that to be here.
Those details can be hammered out. They can be tweaked. Like I said, this is just kind of a starter point. I just wanted some feedback.
I think it's a good point to start. I think it'll need a little consideration and review. But yeah, I think it's important to have someone on call. It can be, unless you've got somebody previously identified, it can be pretty hard to find someone on New Year's Eve who's fit for duty. And so having that person identified ahead of time can get you out of some tight jams. So.
Well, and I'm gonna go back to this situation that Kane remembers oh so well of coming around when we lost water. And the city water froze by us and he was delivering water with a fire truck to our basement. That stuff happens, right? And,
Been there, done that.
and so having somebody available 24/7, weekends, we are gonna have things. So I think having a system in play that we have that covered so residents aren't stuck. There's nothing worse than not being able to have water or flush your toilet and having sewer backup in your house. So I think that this is something that the city should look at. And so I would support that, them looking at this and setting up a system that's fair to the employees and also provides coverage to the residents.
So, I guess, we got a couple of things to work out with this $512 per week compared to different employees' hours, comp hours.
Yep.
Why don't we bring that back to the March meeting, if that's okay?
Yep, for sure. Like you say, we just need to find something.
Before they make a
Comparable.
recommendation.
Yep, thank you.
Well, I appreciate the comments because what you explained with on-call times, I have no idea, so I appreciate the background, so thank you. I'm sure that type of question will come up early, again. Unfortunately. Okay, I think that's, everything. Do we have anything on the, last item, the cross connection?
Ryland, the cross connection is evolving. We're working on it. We're trying to develop a simple plan, and I think right now that's going to consist of commercial, non-residential buildings. For example, Glenn's, they have a sprinkler system and they have a double check backflow preventer. I can see going through the city's non-residential users and kind of doing an audit, a cross connection audit, and then following the plumbing laws, the plumbing code, and getting a document out there, a one cover all document that says, here's the rules, here's what's required, and the city has the authority to inspect and provide this language to the consumers. But it's ongoing.
Okay, it's in process. We'll leave it on the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else touch base on? If not, I make a motion to adjourn at 8:10. Second. Great, thank you. Favor say aye. Aye. And that on a B, so it'll be a good time. Thanks, Kane.
Yeah, thank everyone. We'll catch up next month.
Thank you.
March 12th, 6 days before our goal line. We'll have to have the meeting